Welcome to your first Monday in October with the Jamaica Magazine team. I'm Theodore Henry. Let's get the reels rolling. Beyond the general aesthetic of buildings, which for many architects is an essential detail, building design should probably consider functionality, occupants' health, and even productivity. It may seem simple, but the details in the design are key, and that's exactly why the world is observing World Architect Day today. This year's observance is being crafted around the theme Architecture for Well-Being, with a drive towards using building designs and construction methods that have been proven to foster physical, mental, and social well-being.
Good day, I'm Stephen McHugh, and this is your JIS News for Monday, October 3, 2022. The agriculture sector is reporting more than $200 million worth of damage due to the recent passage of Tropical Storm Ian. Portfolio Minister Pernell Charles Jr. gave the preliminary figures at the Jamaica Pig Farmers Association annual general meeting on Wednesday. Minister Charles Jr. says affected farmers will receive support once assessments have been completed.
We haven't gotten the breakdown, so we need to disaggregate that. But we are speedily moving ahead to complete those assessments so that we can put something forward and then to determine how best to give support to those persons that have been impacted.
Preliminary reports show that several farmers suffered losses due to flood waters. Minister Charles Jr. is urging investors to adopt resilient operations against shocks to help prevent losses.
This really reiterates the need for resilience. A lot of our farmers who implemented resilient operations, they're proud to say that they came out with less damage than expected.
In the meantime, additional markers will be placed along boundary lines to strengthen the protection of fish sanctuaries. 50 buoy markers worth $7,500 were handed over to the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries recently by the World Bank. The donation was delivered under the bank's Promoting Community-Based Climate Resilience in the Fisheries Sector project. Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries Pernell Charles Jr. welcomed the markers during his recent visit to the Caribbean Coastal Area Management Foundation in Clarendon.
These markers will be used to support and to strengthen the NFA enforcement efforts. More specifically, they will impact illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing practices within the coastal areas.
According to Minister Charles, the markers will help promote good fishing and farming practices as well as reduce overharvesting. The benefit will also result in economic growth through the protection of the island's natural resources while safeguarding the income and livelihoods of fisherfolk. In other news, the upgrading of the Spanish Town Road water distribution pipeline will result in increased and reliable supply for residents and businesses. 24 kilometers of pipelines have been installed along the heavily trafficked corridor from 6 miles to Blake Road near the intersection with South Camp Road. Construction, which started in November 2020 by the National Water Commission, NWC, was completed in July this year. On Friday, Prime Minister Andrew Holness toured a section of the project in the vicinity of the Mother White Bridge on Spanish Town Road. Mr. Holness described the project as a nation-building investment, noting that the development should last upwards of 50 years.
Government decided to undertake a $2.4 billion investment in putting in new mains, and that included putting in new mains along the Mandela Highway and a new main running all the way along Spanish Town Road. And what we're seeing now is the completion of that, and that has the capability to bring in approximately 15 million gallons of water into Kingston and Central.
The Spanish Town Road potable water supply transmission main project is the largest single pipeline replacement activity undertaken locally since the Rio Cobre transmission main was replaced 10 years ago. The project is expected to reduce service disruptions, eliminate non-revenue water, and improve network flexibility to mitigate the effects of drought conditions in sections of Kingston and St. Andrew. Secondary distribution lines have been installed along both sides of Spanish Town Road to minimize the need for road excavations when providing future service connections. Jamaica will be leading a trade mission to Guyana as part of efforts to strengthen business linkages and trade between our two countries. The team, which is led by Investment Minister Senator Orvin Hill, left the island yesterday for the 6-day mission.
To explore collaborative business opportunities between our two countries with focus on agribusiness, infrastructure, and manufacturing. This mission is timely, as both Jamaica and Guyana are experiencing strong economic growth after the fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic.
The Ministries of Education and Justice will be partnering to provide restorative justice training to students at the Kingston Technical High School. Education Minister Fable Williams made the announcement during a tour of the institution earlier today. The school community is still reeling from last week's stabbing death of a student who was involved in an altercation with another. As she addressed students at their devotional service, Minister Williams said the ministry will be reaching out to families of the victim and the offender.
To help them with resolving conflicts and knowing when they're in a situation that needs to be de-escalated, helping to give them those skills that hopefully they will internalize and use, and they will take back into their homes and help to teach their parents how to interact better with them, so that when they show up at school, they're in a better frame of mind.
The Ministry of Education will also be taking additional steps to help parents understand the negative impacts of some of their actions on children. And finally, Governor General Sir Patrick Allen and Prime Minister Andrew Holness led a national memorial service in honor of the passing of the country's former head of state, Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom. Held yesterday at the St. Andrew Parish Church, the country's official memorial service was attended by custodies, other government ministers, and representatives from the opposition party. The Governor General led the Bible reading for the memorial service.
The souls of the righteous are in the hand of God, and no torment will ever touch them.
Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more.
In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you?
Her Majesty the Queen, who is Great Britain's longest reigning monarch, died peacefully at her home in Scotland on September 8 at age 96. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Stephen McHugh. Thanks for watching.
A critical part of our government's thrust towards getting all Jamaicans to fully experience prosperity is making housing accessible with firm structures. Our first feature looks at some of the housing opportunities being facilitated by the Jamaica Mortgage Bank.
Shelter, one of humans' most basic needs. While many persons have access to housing, only a few have accomplished the goal of home ownership. That's why government through the Jamaica Mortgage Bank is ensuring that even more Jamaicans can lay claim to a piece of the rock. As the name suggests, the Jamaica Mortgage Bank provides interim financing for developers to build affordable houses. Established in June 1971 as a private liability company, the bank was converted in 1973 to a statutory corporation. During the 1980s and early 90s, the bank partnered with what is now known as the Housing Agency of Jamaica to fund housing solutions across the island. Today, the Jamaica Mortgage Bank is a self-financing entity with the sole purpose of funding safe and affordable housing solutions for Jamaicans.
The Jamaica Mortgage Bank has financed over 150 projects over its 50 years. More recently though, in the last 5 years, we have accelerated our mandate and we are now providing more financing than before in the last 5 years. In fact, over the last 5 years, we have assessed about 58 projects across the length and breadth of Jamaica, valuing about $26 billion.
The bank offers 3 distinct services: financing for the primary market, financing for the secondary market, and managing the Government of Jamaica's Mortgage Indemnity Insurance Plan. The core of the mortgage bank's work is in the primary market, where it provides developers with financing to build houses.
You cannot go anywhere in Jamaica and not see housing development going on. And that's only because there's such a huge gap between the number of starts compared to the demand. And in addition to that, we know that it's a low-hanging fruit in terms of investments for developers. They enjoy a very healthy return on equity and return on investment. So what we're seeing is that development in terms of returns compete with only the stock market.
In the secondary market, the bank offers a pool of funds to financial institutions who then on-lend to potential homeowners at an affordable rate. And through the Mortgage Indemnity Insurance Plan, the bank provides an entry point for developers to get into the housing market.
We insure the risk that mortgage lenders do not want to take in terms of the percentage of loan to an individual. Once that is insured, then the potential purchaser of a house has a lower down payment, and so they can get into housing much quicker. We think that's a very innovative plan for Jamaica, and we have seen a significant increase in the number of financial institutions that is using that tool to get individuals into houses much faster.
A developer seeking financing for their project may call the Jamaica Mortgage Bank or visit its website to ascertain the requirements for a loan.
We have a checklist of about 27 items. It sounds a lot, but it's not that onerous. It is information that you would have to provide to any financial institution in which you want to access a loan. But some of the primary things that we look at is a drawing. We look at the approvals from the municipal corporations. We look at approvals from NEPA if it is required. We look at approvals from the fire, water if required. We also look at the costs. We look at the marketing because that is critical.
A financial feasibility project document is generated, which is run through the Jamaica Mortgage Bank's credit model. From there, a rating and pricing is attached to the project. Securitization and mobilization are the next steps once an agreement is reached between the developer and the bank.
Most developers will tell you that we behave like a private sector company. Our process is extremely efficient. In fact, from the time of submitting the documentation that are required to the time of approval, once a project is deemed to be feasible, could take 1 month.
The first word I have to say is really awesome. We first approached the mortgage bank in, I think it was November of 2019, and immediately we were introduced to their technical staff that brought us right through the process. And I want to emphasize on the technical staff because without them we probably wouldn't have been where we're at right now. They really guide us throughout the process, and I can tell you by February of 2020 we had a provisional approval.
The Jamaica Mortgage Bank has been very interactive and cooperative, and we have been partners for the last over a decade.
We are seeing the ordinary person getting into housing development. We have seen an increase in women in development. We have seen pastors, we have seen people who have had other careers getting into housing development. And I think all of that combined is contributing to the increase in volume that we're seeing in terms of housing.
It's pragmatic advice based on profitability for the project and tweaking the design that the consumer can accept and appreciate it. And if them tell you something, that is how it goes. You understand? They're very factual and straightforward. And that's what you need. And reliable. Reliability is what you need in this industry.
Each project is looked on an individual basis and priced accordingly. But we are extremely competitive in terms of our interest rates. We also have a discounted rate based on whether or not that project is considered a green project, whether there's water harvesting, whether or not there might be solar panels.
Persons wishing to access the bank's mortgage indemnity insurance plan will have to go through their mortgage lending institution. Here's how it works. A potential homeowner is seeking a $10 million loan. The mortgage institution is only willing to lend 90% of the loan, leaving the 10% or $1 million for the mortgagee. If the potential homeowner is unable to come up with a down payment, the Jamaica Mortgage Bank steps in, providing insurance for the remaining loan amount. That way, should the mortgagee default on the loan, the mortgage bank will reimburse the lending institution the 10%. So, if you're looking to finance your housing development,
the mortgage bank is here to assist, to help you, to hold your hands, and to help you accomplish your objective.
To deal with crime and violence, we must be united. Please cooperate with the security forces. Call 311-119 or the JDF tip line. If you know something and you not talk, you're a part of the problem.
With efforts being ramped up to control and ultimately decrease the level of crime and violence in our nation, government has activated a new Firearms Act. Recently, our Prime Minister had an audience with UNGA guests, and here's an excerpt from his address regarding the nation's war on guns.
Mr. President, several countries in Latin America and the Caribbean are facing an epidemic of crime and violence. Since the pandemic and the disruption in education, challenges with mental health are being increasingly expressed in violent ways. The propensity to resolve conflict or cope with social and mental stresses through violence requires a public health response. And Jamaica has not only engaged in global initiatives such as the Partnership to End Violence Against Children, but we have recently empaneled a National Commission on the Prevention of Violence to advise the government on building out an articulated public health and social service response. However, the situation is exponentially complicated and exacerbated by the influx of illegal and unregistered small arms into our country. From organized transnational criminal enterprises to street-level gangs to the misguided youth in the inner city, the availability of guns is driving an ever-increasing homicide rate. In the same way that a war on drugs is being prosecuted, in which we have been faithful partners in policing what comes through our waters or leaves our shores, there now must be a war on guns. Jamaica does not manufacture guns, but our population suffers from the effects of widely available guns. The countries that manufacture weapons that are available to the public must implement stronger measures to ensure that those weapons do not end up on the streets and in the hands of people for whom they were not intended. In the same way that there is a concern about illegal drugs on the streets of the rich countries, there must be concern about guns on the streets of developing countries like Jamaica.
Proper social programs are a critical benchmark for progressive nations and institutions across the world. We now move our attention to government's latest social program.
The oaths, what I've was living in, it was horrible. And I get a nice 3-bedroom, living hall, kitchen and bathroom. I want to say thank you so much. This coming from my heart.
Since 2019, the National Social Housing Program has been delivering solutions to eliminate housing poverty on the island. And recently, government opened a low-cost housing design competition to place roofs over the heads of even more Jamaicans.
I'm very interested in seeing what the solutions that you bring to the table are, because we are going to take them and put them into practice. The transformation of Jamaica starts now.
Through the competition, launched in May, the state will access creative, original, resilient, low-cost housing designs. It's anticipated that this will accelerate home ownership under the National Social Housing Program, NSHP.
What we want to get from the competition is a design unit that uses materials that are easily available, cost-effective materials, but materials that are also durable, that are suited for our environment, and materials that are easy to use in the construction process.
Whatever solutions that come up, even those solutions that don't win, the government would take that application, put it through our bureaucracy, and then have it implemented.
The designs will be used as a model for the National Social Housing Program, NSHP, a component of the Housing, Opportunity, Production and Employment Hope Program. The NSHP was developed in 2018 to improve the housing conditions of the country's poor and indigent. The objective is achieved through 3 modalities.
The first is the provision of indigent housing. The benefits will be equitably distributed across 63 constituencies, with each constituency receiving 5 units per annum. Then there is the relocation of vulnerable communities. Persons whose lives are in imminent danger will be given priority attention. And then the third modality is the upgrading of tenements, or as we call them, big yards. One such project will be undertaken in each constituency where we can identify tenement yards.
The Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation has oversight for the NSHP.
I just asked me about to give up in and say, no, to this again, we have fight with something we said. Just approach, we said time. So, so we're glad to we can explain to them.
And I know that you will impact a lot of persons, just as though you impact me, my life, my children, my family. I could never have done this on my own. So, I'm so grateful.
This is not and will not be taken for granted, but we will of course sleep like kings and queens tonight. Of course, so we are grateful.
And recently, a memorandum of understanding was signed for the construction of the Victoria Palms housing development. Through the project, 200 residents of Denham Town in Kingston will be relocated to more secure accommodations.
We believe that good housing, good shelter is a right, and we are going to do everything in our powers to ensure that you can benefit from one of these shelter solutions. Even if you're poor and indigent, it shouldn't be that you live in a little tattoo where if the slightest breeze blow it could collapse, or if there's a sprinkle of rain, you get wet. That is a commitment that this government has to our people, that all Jamaicans, regardless of your social standard, your social circumstances, there should be a minimum level of shelter, of housing that you are entitled to as a citizen of this country. I can't tell you that overnight we are going to transform all the dilapidated, poor housing conditions like this to this. I couldn't promise you that. But what I can commit to you is that I am going to try my hardest to move from this to this.
Domestic violence and abuse has always been going on. Say to victims, report the matter, seek help, go to your local police. There are persons who are trained in the various divisions to deal with domestic violence and domestic abuse. We have 2 centers that are currently operational. One is at the Matilda's Corner Police Station. You can call the Matilda's Corner Police Station for that. The other one is at Air 5 Headquarters. That's on the same compound as Constant Spring Police Station. The number is 702-5120 or 702-5121.
As we continue observing World Architecture Day 2022 for this 24-hour period, today's Hear This will feature some building designs that have stood against history, time, and man-made disasters. Let's get to listing. First on our list is the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. This pyramid is the largest Egyptian pyramid and the tomb of 4th dynasty pharaoh Khufu. Built in the early 26th century BC during a period of around 27 years, the pyramid is the oldest of the 7 wonders of the ancient world and the only one to remain largely intact. Second on our list, the Pantheon and the Acropolis in Athens, Greece. After the Romans had conquered the Greek territories, they practically took over and greatly influenced most of the Western architecture over the next centuries. While greatly inspired by Greek architecture, the Romans introduced quite a few immense innovations themselves. The arch, a well-known architectural element, and concrete, although it was a bit different from the material we use extensively today. Third on our list, the Colosseum Arena. The evolution of architecture continued as the ancient Roman architecture with the further development of the dome or the Colosseum Arena. A new way was found to raise it on piers using 3-dimensional triangular surfaces. And this means that it was no longer necessary for the dome to have a massive support beneath it. Fourth on our list, Notre Dame in Paris. The Renaissance introduced new ways of looking at reality, and most of it was facilitated through architecture. The Renaissance meant re-evaluating classical antiquity and associating mathematics with aesthetics, and the period left behind a vast number of impressive buildings, quite like the structure of the Notre Dame in Paris. This is where all the work for today's magazine wraps up, but be assured that the Jamaica Magazine team is in our studios packaging more information for you tomorrow and even after that. Thanks so much for allowing us into your spaces today. From all of us here at the JIS, I'm Theodore Henry. See you soon.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.